Hey all, so today I'd like to talk about something that just came up in the news recently. It's this thing where they're banning homework in some schools in Florida. I can't do a link for a description, can't make a video description link because this is the YouTube Live app on the phone and it's kind of half-baked. But if you Google it, you'll find it. So if you just Google Florida bans homework schools and you'll get some of the general gist of it. And I think this is a great thing for several reasons, and what I want to discuss is why I think this is a great thing. I kind of want to use this as a stepping stone to talk about how people can help change the world, and I also want to talk about some criticism of the people who think that this is a bad idea. Now, the reason that I think this is a great thing is I remember exactly what homework was. Like, very, very... Okay, red light. That's what you do when there's a red light in New York. I remember very vividly what homework was. It was Mrs. Friedland saying, you need to write out this word. Like, she'll give me a list of 30 words and you have to write out those 30 words 100 times. Or they would make us read a book, and it would be a book that actually had some interest to it. It was a decent book, and you couldn't enjoy the book because you had to write the literary elements. So they would say, for each page in the book, I want you to list the literary elements, underline them, and label them for the story. And I could be wrong here, but I have a feeling that Shakespeare did not intend for, or Mark Twain did not intend for their works to be used to torture children. I could be off, but I have an idea that they meant for their works to be enjoyed, to get a story across, to get a concept across, to get an idea, to criticize society or have a lesson in some way. And that is not done when you have a teacher that says, for each page, tell us the literary elements, or what was the color of this tree in the forest, and anyway, what was I just talking about? Color of the tree in the forest, and you know, all this kind of stupid crap. And it's like, we you know, in the middle of a book it'll say, we walked past a red tree, and then we went on to this, that, and the other, and on the test it would say, or the question it would say, what was the color of the tree? So what does that encourage me to do? Does that encourage me to read the book, to learn how to read? Does it encourage me to try to understand the story? Does it try to understand the times the author was living in? Or am I just going to flip through the book until I get to the word red and then go done? And, or like when it would come to math, let's say it was multiplication or anything else, you would get 150 questions on multiplication. And, you know, if you understood multiplication, you could give somebody 6 problems and they're gonna get it. They don't have to be 150 of them. And if somebody doesn't understand it, they're going to have just as much problems doing 6 of it as they were doing 150 of it. And it was always this authoritarian crap where I would get home from school at 3:30, and at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, for over 5 years of my life, I'd still be doing crap at home, no matter how fast I did it. And you know, it's this boring drudgery that doesn't actually make you better at what it is you're doing. And so I've been criticized for a few reasons for saying this. The first is people would say, when I say I'm against homework or I'm against the current system of public education, people will say that I am against education, which I'm not. I mean, if I was against education, I would not put the ridiculous amount of time I did in editing 260 whatever YouTube videos on the subway, fucking Lenovo T520 on my lap with its Quadro burning me with the 96 degrees, 85% humidity subway station with no breeze. I'm a fan of education. I'm just not a fan of of public education the way it exists, and a big part of that is because of homework. It's this repetitive nonsense, and the thing is, as a kid, you kind of understand when something is bullshit. You know, you may not really be in the mindset to admit it, but you know when you're on some bullshit, and you know when it's society that's on some bullshit. So for example, when I was a kid, I wanted to eat yodels and brownies for each meal of the day. And my dad would explain to me, you can't do that. When you're older, you'll understand. And I would say, no, when I'm older, I know I'll be able to eat brownies and yodels every day. And he would say, listen, I need you to trust me on this. Here's how nutrition works. And then he took me one day to the grocery store and he started pointing out people. And he said, Lewis, see that person over there? And I go, ugh. And he would go, that person ate brownies and yodels for each meal of the day. And I'm like, I don't really believe you, but we'll see. And then there are other things like homework, where I would think that having to do 150 questions on the fucking triangle, angle, whatever theory equation was bullshit. And my teacher would say, Lewis, someday you're gonna realize, you're gonna thank us for the fact that we gave you 150 of these questions every single day for 6 months instead of letting you learn anything else. And when I became an adult, I thought really hard about what my dad had said about the brownies and the yodels. I'm like, you know what? Dad was right about that. I didn't really get it when I was 8 years old. Definitely get it when I'm 17 or 28. But crazy people. But then when we get to the triangle theory and the math and that shit, it's like when I was 17, I'm like, no, I'm in the real world now. I got a real job. Still BS. But maybe I'll get it when I'm 23. 23, I've had my own business for 3 or 4 years at that point. I'm thinking about, you know, the 3 hours a day that I spent writing the words over and over again, triangle theory equations. Nope, still bullshit. And I'm 28, gonna be 29 in a few months. That's why I got all these grays in my hair. That stuff was still bullshit. It was bullshit as much now as it was 10 or 15 years ago. And I think about what I was trying to do as a kid. I think about, you know, when I was 6, 7 years old, I wrote this GW Basic math test. And the whole idea of the math, you know, it was gonna give you different answers. Let me just turn this down because it's annoying me. Don't want to stare at a bright screen. You know, it would give you different answers based on how far off your solution was. So if you said 2 plus 2 is 4, it would say great. If you said 2 plus 2 is 6, it would say no. If you said 2 plus 2 is 100, it would call you an insult. And I remember screwing around with this stuff as a kid. And what really depressed me was having to put time away from real learning to put it into, you know, write the word down 100 times, and the triangle angle theory, or even with history, because I love history. As an adult, I love studying history, but I hated it as a kid because it was memorize dates, memorize years, memorize names. It was never memorize a concept. It was, you know, what year did this happen? What year did that happen? What was the name of the person who did this? What was the name of the person who did that? And I would have to spend 1 or 2 hours reading 80 pages of a chapter to get the names of all these people, because this is pre-Google. This is like, you know, this is like 1996, 1998. I guess you had search engines, but, you know, most houses where I was didn't have internet yet, so you couldn't really cheat as easy as you could now. It was just such a waste of time. And I'm never gonna forget something that happened when I was in my sociology class in 2005. This is before you had all that Marxist crap in college where, you know, this is when sociology was actual sociology, not teaching people to hate white people. And back when I actually enjoyed sociology. And I remember one of the kids talking about graduation. It was a month away from July. We usually got into school at June 26th. And he said something along the lines, this kid said, I can't wait to get out of here. I can't wait to get out of class because I hate learning. I'm so gone. I can't wait to be done with learning. And there was no sarcasm there. It was 110% serious. And that was depressing. That wasn't necessarily the most depressing part of it. The most depressing part of it was the fact that everybody jumped up and laughed and clapped, and the kid who said it wasn't even that popular. It wasn't a popular kid. It was just, you know, somebody people barely heard from, nobody really knew too well, kept to himself, was quiet. Got up and said, I can't wait to not have to learn anymore. And everybody got up and cheered. And when I say that I think public education, is a pile of crap, the reason I say that I think public education as it exists is a pile of crap is because you were able to get a group of 36 people to cheer the idea that they are no longer learning, which is a failure of the system. It's such a terrible failure of the system that you can get people to think that they hate learning. Because when I think back to reading the more interesting parts of history, or I think back to the first time that I figured out why a DC to DC boost circuit wasn't working. I think back to the first time that I figured out the 3 main causes of audio distortion in Neve 2254, and I was able to fix that for a client. That was such an amazing, it was such an amazing dopamine rush for me. I mean, I'm probably using the wrong words, but you know what I mean. It's that motivation to continue doing something that you're good at, and that satisfaction of having overcome ignorance and being able to practically apply that in society to both make money and make people happy and make things work. Like, that is a great feeling. And public education, the way it exists, has managed to beat that feeling out of people for a really long time. And it's just, it really does kind of make me sad. And the issue with the education system as it exists, I believe, is that there's none of that. It's that people genuinely like learning, but they like learning that can be applied to something that has some meaning. And now I said I was going to criticize some of the people that criticized this decision. Now, one of the biggest criticisms of this decision to ban homework, a lot of people say, is that kids are going to have to do things that they don't like. Kids need to learn discipline. They need to learn to do things that they don't like. They need to learn life's not always fair. And you're right. You're right. Life's not always fair, and you're going to have to learn how to do shit that you don't like. But what a bunch of drums. Jeez. Yeah. Lower East Side. I shouldn't be fazed by this stuff anymore. Okay, I'm a little phased by it. Lost my head. So people are always going to have to do things that they don't like, right? And they should learn that. But there's always a reason. There's an agenda. There's a point to it. So, for example, I hate running wires underneath the SMC. I could probably say that there's nothing more that I hate within the confines of my job than running a wire into the SMC. That is hell on earth to me. I hate doing it, especially if it's an inside pad. I curse, I scream, I hate it, it's awful, but I do it, and I happily do it. Whereas homework, even if it's a very small amount of inconvenience with the triangle angle theory bullshit, I hate it. And the reason is because the stuff with the running the wire into the SMC, there's a point to it. There's an end goal. So I'm gonna make something work, check. I'm going to learn something that I'm actually going to use to make money, check. I'm going to make money, check. I'm proving the Apple Store wrong, because again, you know, back in 2008, 2009 when I started doing this, I would have customers come to me and say, Apple told me if anybody said that anybody that tells you they can do this is lying to you and scamming you. Seriously. And now, in 2016, 17, we have like 5 customers coming to us a day saying, somebody at the Apple Store told us this, they said it was unofficial, but yeah, that you could probably help us. So, you know, knowing that continuing to do that work is proving wrong this bullshit, that independent repair are just all scum and liars and whatever, I find that to be a bunch of fun. Great fun. And I get to make someone happy who otherwise would not be happy, which I think is a great thing. So even though I'm doing something that I hate doing, because you're never going to hear me say that I'm passionate about running wires into the SMC. That is not what I wake up for in the morning. I wake up for the results of it. Now, with school, they give you a lot to learn, but what they do is they never put it into context. They make you write down the dates, write down the names, list the little literary elements on the page, and you waste 2 to 4 hours when you're home doing all of this crap. But what they never do is they never tie it together. They never tell you that this is why you should find this interesting. They never try to lead you into what makes it applicable in any way to real society or real problems. And that's why it's so incredibly boring. That's why so many people who live wildly successful lives, who are very well disciplined, did very poorly in school and didn't like school, because it has this authoritarian nature to it of, I want you to list these dates, I want you to solve these problems that have no basis in reality, that have no point and no purpose. And I know that you know they have no point and no purpose, but you're going to do it because I say so. And you know, why can't people make that distinction when they say that you need to learn discipline? Yeah, you do need to learn discipline. You need to learn discipline so that you can do things that you're going to want to do. You know, for the end goal. You're going to have to want to do things that you don't want to do so that you can reach the end goal that you do want to reach. And we've pretty much just crapped all of that away when it comes to public school. You know, you have to think about so many of the aspects of public school. I mean, you know, the desks are in rows. You have one authoritarian person that's dealing with 30 to 40 people at a time. You have, I mean, like, there's a bell. Like, there's a bell that rings. Where has there been a bell that rings outside of a fucking factory or a steel mill in 1870 to 1911? It's just so obsolete. So the people who are saying this is bad because now kids are not going to learn discipline, bullshit. You just don't want to do the work to create a goal that they want to achieve. You can't figure out how to get kids excited about history. You can't compare it to conflicts going on. You can't compare a conflict going on in 1850 to a conflict going on now because you're lazy, because you don't understand history, because you don't want to put in the intellectual effort to make it interesting. So you just want to make people memorize dates. Just admit it. Just be honest that you don't want to be a good teacher. And because I have had teachers that were able to do that, and they were very few and far between, and they had a lot of the same opinions on the subject. And the second thing that pisses me off about this is how people are, how do I put this? Yeah, and everybody's probably been following this whole thing with like Trump and Scaramucci and the mooch and loyalty and all this and tossing people aside. And I think it's an interesting analogy to this because people have no loyalty to their past self. And the reason that they have no loyalty to their past self is because their past self is the person who's never going to call them on their bullshit, because their past self is gone. You know, and a lot of people will kind of hide this. They'll say something along the lines of, you know, well, I just want to move past it, or I threw that behind, I don't want to resent. And they'll use these excuses, in my opinion, to not have to deal with that shit. And the problem is that if you never admit that something that was done to you was wrong, then you're just going to say that it should happen to everybody else into the future. And you're going to allow it to happen to everybody else into the future. And I met up with this kid. I mean, I shouldn't say kid because he's an adult now, but somebody that was in Mrs. Friedland's class in 4th grade at PS, which was probably one of the, you know, the 5th circles of hell. I met up with this kid, and we were reminiscing about being in Mrs. Friedland's class. And this was a teacher that she got off on scared children. Like she would find ways. Even if she was saying something that was really good, she would always say it with this evil kind of smirk on her face and smiling like she was going to say something really mean and miserable. And she knew what she was doing. She knew that she was scaring you. And every time a kid knew that they had to go to her class, you could just see like the color in their face begin to change. You could see that they knew that they were about to be tortured by somebody who just genuinely enjoyed scaring children. She would always find ways to not, if you did something wrong, she wouldn't just point out that you did something wrong, she would lead you to it in this really humiliating and embarrassing fashion so that everybody in the class could laugh at what a piece of shit you were. And she took advantage of that. And every kid, even the laughing kids, knew that it could then be turned around on them as well. Just a really miserable human being. Ah, crap, I'm trying to cross at the wrong place again. And I got to meet with this kid, we were talking about it, and he had a little cousin. What did you do?
Piece of shit!
Suck it. People always say this stuff while they're on their bikes, like you're a piece of shit, but they ride away when you like stop. Fucking piece of shit. Oh well, that's New York for you. Anyway. Yeah, like the light is green for me. I'm gonna cross. I mean, it's not green for me now. It's red, but it was clearly green when I was crossing. See, it's just about to change over here. Like, I'm not gonna stop, I'm just gonna keep walking. I have no problems playing chicken with a bike. Especially one that is riding in the wrong direction. Anyway, where was I before I almost got hit by a bike? I forgot my train of thought. Anyway, so that guy has a little cousin that's in a class with somebody that's almost just like Mrs. Friedland. And I was asking, what does he think about that? And he said something along the lines of, you know, it'll toughen her up, she'll be fine. And I really chewed him out for that. I really chewed him out for that. Because he knew how bad it was to be in that class with that miserable, awful, terrible human being that should be behind fucking bars for how she treated children. And for getting off on the authority that she had, for making sure that every day felt like a prison, that they were just destroying your self-confidence, destroying your will, destroying your independence. He knew that was crap. But he totally forgot about it. And he said, and I asked why, and he says, well, at some point you just have to get over it. It wasn't really that bad, blah, blah, blah. And maybe it's because I have a really good long-term memory. I have a very bad short-term memory. I'm not good at remembering, you know, if you tell me 10 numbers in a specific sequence, I'll forget the first 2 immediately, 5 seconds after. But I have a really good long-term memory, and I remember exactly what it was like to be a kid. And because of that, I don't let go of what I perceive to be serious injustices. And I hate using the word justice because it reminds me of the word social justice, which is its own mess in and of itself. But I really do remember these things. And I remember what it was like sitting in that class. I remember what it was like for everybody else. I remember how between 3rd and 5th grade, it was just, you know, like the sun was down every single day, having to be in the room with this teacher. And he had totally forgot about it. Not really forgotten about it, but he just kind of brushed it off. And the reason I think people do this is because your past self is never going to call you on your bullshit. Your past self is gone. So he's never going to say, hey man, why didn't you stick up for me? Hey man, why did you forget about all the bad stuff that happened to me? Your past self, whether it's with relationships, whether it's with business, whether it's with school or whatever, your past self is not there. It's not physically there to call you on your bullshit. And when something is out of sight, it's very often out of mind. And I think that people kind of forget that you don't have to fight to create change. You don't have to really like protest. You don't have to put up signs. You don't have to do much. All you have to do, the one thing that you have to do is realize that people age, and that just by acknowledging that something that was done to you was wrong, you can change the world. Because what people don't realize is if you look at a lot of the change that's occurred over the past several hundred years, a lot of it is just one generation has a very strong belief. The next generation does not think they're correct at all. And eventually, all the people from the prior generation, they retire, they resign, they quit, they get sick, they die, it's what people do, and then they're not around. And then you're up for the job because you're the next of kin, we're the next of kin, we're the next generation, and then we get put into those decision-making positions where it's very important that we remember what was done to us, and it's very important that we don't forget that which was wrong or was not fair or did not make sense. If we try to justify that which was done to us that was wrong, or that which did not make sense, or that which was abusive to us, then we are going to repeat the cycle. See, it's a way of feeling good in the moment. It's like, I'm not going to admit, if I refuse to admit that that 1 year was robbed from me, then I don't have to emotionally deal with the fact that that 1 year was taken from me by that psychotic witch, Mrs. Friedland. I can't help myself sometimes. But you know, you don't have to admit that. But if you admit it, what you now have the power to do is make sure that that doesn't occur to anybody else ever into the future, because you're now in that decision-making position. When you're in 3rd or 4th grade and you tell somebody this is what this teacher said, they're not going to care. They're going to say, oh, you're just fucking complaining, you know, whiny-ass kid. But when you're 28 or 29 years old and you hear that your little, 7 or 8-year-old cousin is telling you certain things, you're old enough that you can go to the school. You can speak to the administrator. You can talk to the parents. You can start a real dialogue where people will actually listen to you because you have the benefit that you're now an adult. And it's funny that I wound up wandering into Little Italy right after mentioning the mooch. So, right up, let's see if I can show you that sign. Right up here, welcome to Little Italy. It probably looks like shit. But I find it interesting. And the reason that you can change things, the reason that you can change things without even having a protest is because someday it's going to be down to your decision. Someday the people that thought the war on drugs was a great idea will all be dead. Someday the people that thought that 3 hours of writing down spelling words and that spending 6 years learning the fucking triangle angle equation theories and all of that, they're going to be gone, and it's going to be down to you. Somebody's going to look at you and say, hey, we've been doing this for a few hundred years this way. What do you think we should do? And if you continue, if you don't put in your input, if you just keep doing what has always been done because it's just easy to not change the system, then you're a part of the problem. And what I see happening here is that people who grew up like we did, having to, instead of enjoy the book, write the literary element for each page, people who instead of use math to solve real world problems had to spend 2 hours a day at home for 6 to 8 months, for years, dealing with fucking triangles that have nothing to do with the world. Like, they realized this is bullshit, and they said, you know what? It's down to us now to make a choice. What do we think? Yeah, that seems like it was a really royal waste of a quarter of my childhood. Let's dump that. And I think there's nothing wrong with it. I think that's a great idea. And it always requires that we look back and ask, why was something done this way, and do I believe it should continue to be done this way? Again, you don't have to change the world through protesting, through signs, through violence. At some point, it's just going to come down to you. It's like with work. I mean, when I went to work, I had to punch in at a time clock. And if I was a minute late, I had to get screamed at by a boss. And if I was a minute early, actually, if I was more than 3 minutes early, I could not punch in at the time clock. So let's say I was 10 minutes early. I have to wait to punch in, and then I would forget to punch in because I would wound up doing something else at work. And then I have to punch in late, and then I would get a write-up. I thought this entire system was bullshit. So it wasn't that I had, I didn't have to fight or have a revolution to not have to deal with it. It's just when I started my own business, it just came down to, oh, how do we keep track of time? Well, how about this? I'm not gonna use a punch clock system because I think that shit is dumb. You can think otherwise and I won't be offended. It may work for your business, it doesn't work for mine. At some point, all these small little decisions are gonna come down to you. And when they do, I want you to never forget your past self. I want you to never forget how you were treated. I want you to never forget the things that when you were younger you thought were injustices or silly or wrong or draconian or useless, that as an adult you can still identify and agree with. So again, as a kid, I wanted to eat brownies and yodels every day, but when I turned 17, I realized, probably long before I turned 17, I realized there's a great reason to not do that. But as a kid, I thought, having 4 hours of homework when I get home in this completely useless junk is moronic and often just a tool by the teachers to threaten children. I don't know if any of you, they would say, if you do this, or if you keep talking, we're gonna give you more homework, or if you keep giving wrong answers, I'm gonna give you more homework. Mrs. Friedland loved to pile on the homework just to fuck with people, and she would have this smile on her face and say, I think we're gonna give more homework for this, and then she'd start writing it on the board. And with each thing that she wrote, she would turn around with this fucking Grinch-like look on her face because she knew that she was torturing children. Back to my point. If you realize that your thoughts as a child on something being crap still are valid when you're an adult, there's a really good chance that it probably was crap. And if it was, change it. Don't allow it to stay the same. Don't allow the status quo to stay the same. And make it go away. So I'm very happy with the fact that homework is ending in one school district and that they're replacing it with reading. I also hope that they find ways to replace it with children learning what they're interested in learning. I would have dreamt of a program where when I was 6 and 7 years old, I could toss out the fucking triangle angle theory shit and replace it with GW Basic. I mean, I probably would, if that was the case, if I didn't have to waste hours a day on that and only spend time on that for the 30 minutes I had before bed every day, I probably would have coded that board view software long before Paul Daniels. So maybe I'm bragging a little bit, I would have been that good at it. But there's so much wasted potential, and I believe that children are treated as this underclass, this allowed to be hated, despised, shit upon, and we can kind of throw all of our frustrations onto children. You can hit them, you can beat them, you can circumcise them, you can tell them, oh, I had a bad day and I had to deal with this stuff, so you gotta learn how to deal with crap too. It's like, we don't care about children in our society the way that we should. And it kind of makes me sad to see that every time a child expresses a legitimate concern about what it is they're experiencing, or a legitimate criticism of the world, that they get shut down. And not because that their criticism is not valid, not because they're whining, it's often shut down because the adult wants to project they want to feel better about the fact that their boss treated them like shit by saying, yeah, look, my kid has to deal with it too. It's like, at work, I had to get yelled at, so it's okay that your teacher's yelling at you for this. Even if with the teacher, your boss may be yelling at you because you fucked up at your job, or the teacher may be yelling at the kid because the teacher's just a piece of shit. I like to see that children are finally starting to not be treated as this pathetic underclass that has no rights. And it makes me happy. Anyway, let's see what your thoughts are here. Wow. So I could see 4 comments per page, and there's about, oh my god. You can see the speed at which I'm scrolling. Alright, so there's no way in hell that I can read even almost, yeah, this is like, jeez. Let's see. No, homework means no problem solving on your own. No homework means the freedom to solve the problems that you're interested in solving on your own. Let's see. That quality, though. What do you expect? This is what we get in New York City. The funny thing is I got rid of the Moto G for the sole reason that I thought it would have better quality for streaming. I thought that the bottleneck was the shitty processor, and when I got the S7, I realized the bottleneck was the YouTube app. If you're live streaming using an Android phone, it doesn't matter if you have a $150 potato or a flagship Samsung, it's gonna always look like shit. Okay, let's see. Stand someplace where I'm not going to get robbed and read your questions. If you're going to read your questions and look down on the phone, you should always have your back in a corner so that you have a full view, especially in the dark. I have a Lenovo W520 Hotter. I'm back at 8:44, it's 9:08, so I'm like 30 minutes behind. They teach you how to solve problems they make up in their head, but not how to approach new or unsolved problems. I agree. I closed my cam girl tabs for this. Well, that's more than I would say. That's more than I would do. Let's see, we have some. Oh, you can't block from mobile, can you? Lame. Homework doesn't always mean you're learning. Correct. I'm waiting for someone to ask him for spare change. 3 people already did. You are not paying attention. I just walked too fast for you to hear, I suppose. School and fuck homework. Comment from Urad. These brats are already dancing in the streets, so you can't drive safe. They really need to teach public safety down. What? What are kids going to do that's better with their time? Well, they can learn. They can play with Arduino boards. They can learn a trade. They can do anything related to any one of their interests. You know, I think about what I could have done in terms of programming if that 3 hours a day was spent pursuing my interest in GW Basic when I was 6 or 7, rather than wasting it on, like, I don't remember these dates. I don't remember. There was like the Navajo, the Hopi, the Indians, and all this. I learned so much stuff that I will never use, that I do not care about. You know, just like the triangle shit. It's just, imagine if I could have used that towards something that was actually valuable. Give kids some, like, if you just give them some groups of things that they can do that are productive in learning, and at least let people, give them some degree of choice, I would say. In the US, you never give you context yet. See, we have a page of complaining, 2 pages of complaining. Discipline isn't just doing as you're told. Discipline is conditioning yourself to make the right decisions when you will benefit. I agree. It's indoctrination for slavery. Yeah, if you look at what the public education system, what the system that ours is based on was designed to do, was just make factory workers, make soldiers, make, again, like when I bring up things like the bell. Why is there a bell? Why is... This is very Alex Jones walking on top of a mountain. No, Alex Jones would get way more views than I do. Group projects and field assignments are much better than boring homework. I agree. If you're going to give people something to do, there has to be some feeling of accomplishment. Because, and I could be wrong here, but I'm just going to propose a theory that I believe that when you learn something and you apply what you've learned and you see that there's a positive outcome, that there is some sort of dopamine rush in the head, and it's like it allows you to feel good because you know that what you've done was productive. and then it actually kind of strengthens your brain in some way and makes it easier to do whatever it was you're doing. So it kind of naturally incentivizes you to keep learning whatever it is you're learning, to keep doing whatever it is you're doing. And you get that when you learn something that has a point, but you don't get that when you're listing the literary elements in a book. When somebody asks you, how does this relate to society, and they can't give you a good answer, or like, I'm never gonna forget. There's this thing, because teachers always lie. Like, anybody remember you're not gonna have a calculator in your pocket every day when you're an adult? And it's like, nah, fuck you. I know that since you dealt with, yeah, I know. You're used to the whole concept of nothing ever changing. The way public school hasn't changed for almost damn near 100, 150 years. I know that you work for a public school, little teacher. And I know that you don't expect that there's things like advances in technology or changes in the world. But we actually do have a calculator in our pocket every single day, almost regardless of your income. It's just horseshit. Horseshit. Homework should not be 2 hours long. I agree. If you understand the triangle angle theory, 3 problems, 6 problems is enough to prove that you get it. If you don't get it, you're going to be so confused at number 1 that you're going to be asking your parents for help or going to tutor. There's really no need to give somebody 100 or 150 questions on it. There's no need. Like there's no need. You can't go comparing history conflicts to current ones in elementary school. Way to go, advanced. I think you can. You know, one of the things that's actually prompted me to be interested in having children, because I've always kind of thought I wasn't going to have kids for most of my life. But one of the things that makes me think about it is there is something inherently fun and interesting in having to take what's going on in the modern world, take complex economic topics, take complex political topics, take complex business concepts, and reduce it to where a 5-year-old will understand it. Because, you know, there was this one person, Bernard Fox, that I had as a teacher a long time ago, and he said that if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you probably don't know it. And I never really grasped just how true that was until I started trying to explain a lot of the things I thought I knew about to a 5 or a 6-year-old. But you actually can. It's really difficult to. And again, this is when I talk about my criticisms of public school. Just because somebody is not able to get a concept across to a kid doesn't mean that that concept is not something that children are ready for. I think that you can explain these things. It just requires a quality individual who understands context, who understands how a child's mind works, but above all, is interested in how a child's mind works. Most teachers don't care how children's minds work. They don't want to learn. They see it like they're not interested. To make an analogy, it's like it's the difference between folding clothes to put them into a bag and just, oh, okay, I'm late to the airport. Let me try to jam all these clothes into this bag as quickly as possible. You know, if you fold the clothes, they fit in the bag. But if you don't care, you're gonna be using your foot and like starting to jam all your clothes into the bag right before it's time for you to go. And I think there are a lot of teachers out there that don't want to take the time to fold the clothes or prepare the ideas before they enter the young person's mind. They just want to kick and shove it in there. And when the idea doesn't get shoved in there, then they get mad, they get angry, they lash out at the children. Or even worse, they'll start coming up with crap like, we'll remove your worst 4 test scores for the semester, or they start curving the grades. Like, I remember I had this one math teacher, and the math teacher that I had, there was a test and it had 5 questions on it. 5 questions, right? Each question was worth an equal amount of points according to the grading stuff that it said on the bottom. So it said each question was worth 20 points. For one of the questions, I put a question mark and a sad face. One of them I guarantee I got wrong, and the other 3 I guessed. On that test, I got an 85 or an 86. Like, you know, there are teachers that do that because they just give up on trying to get certain ideas into your head. But all you gotta do is you gotta fold the ideas, you gotta think about it, you gotta put your time and effort in and understand how a kid's brain works. And a lot of people don't want to figure that out because they just want to make their 45 or 65,000 bucks a year, get their 2 to 3 months off in the summer, and you know, and be a little dictator over a room of 30 kids. I don't like the idea of them spending 8 hours at school and 2 hours at home. So many better things to do. Yeah, and it's one of the rules that I set for myself when I started this business. Is if I have to work, I'll work 16 or 18 hours a day. But as soon as I get home, I'm done. I'll do all the work required at work. But I think this comes from childhood. I think this comes from the fact that as a kid, jaywalking again. Whoops. I'm gonna wind up walking into a car or a bike at this rate. But as a kid, I learned just how annoying it was to know that you were bringing work home with you and the stress that it adds. So I'll work for 16 hours if I have to, but as soon as I walk out the door, I'm done. I think we're at the point where the people tried to hit me with their bike. The problem with indoctrinating young people who won't know any better into a system that aims to provide them with a piece of paper on a large loan that does not guarantee them any success. I agree. Someone's gonna get their ass beat. Not me. Not me. Should have kicked his tire. Eh. Okay. So it's okay to tell kids that everything has to be fun or liked to even understand why it is taught, and if something is hard, you should not bother. No, that's a straw man. Kids should learn what a straw man is, and this is a prime example of it. Not everything has to be fun or liked or understood. What I said was that when I have to run a wire under the SMC, I hate it. I hate every moment of it. And when I film it, you can see on recording that for the entire 3 hours it takes me, it sucks, I'm cursing, it's awful. But the reason that it's acceptable, the reason that I do it, and the reason that I will continue to do it, is because the outcome has some virtue, some value, some productive reason for it. And we should teach children in a manner where they see some productive or something that's linked to a real world problem with everything that we teach them. And again, this can be done. It can be done. You just have to be a decent teacher. And I had teachers like that. You know, I had teachers like, let's see, who can I? There was, wow. Okay, I had a few, like Mr. Pelinkovic from Wagner High School. Like, that's a teacher that I genuinely hope, I mean this in the best way possible, gets out of the public education system. He should be making, you know, $600,000 a year somewhere, figuring out how to educate the nation in a new way. Like, people that really understood how to make something interesting, how to take each day of class material, relate it to real-world problems, relate those real-world problems to our teenage problems, and then get us to actually want to come to class and learn. I don't remember, or Mr. Jaccarino in math. I mean, just the sheer amount of crap that we had to learn in a very short period of time because they were changing the Math A and B curriculum. And he had all these kids that, you know, had all these terrible teachers beforehand, and he managed to make it, every single piece of the puzzle, interesting for us to solve. And there would be kids that were staying for extra 10 or 20 minutes in an unair conditioned, and you know what that was like in New York, unair conditioned public school, because they saw that there was, even though the problems sucked, reading Shakespeare and having to try to translate that old English to modern English sucked. There was a point to it. So not everything has to be fun or liked, as you've strawmanned, and clearly, because you can't produce a real argument of strawman. Not everything has to be liked. You're not going to like a lot of what you do, but there has to be some real-world productive reason for doing what you do. You know, like, people probably don't like mining coal, but they like having energy. People probably don't like having to sit in a hot kitchen for 12 hours a day, but there's the purpose of you know, a restaurant providing food to hundreds of people, you have to think about the outcome. You have to teach people that the outcome is worthwhile. And if you can't do that, you're probably just a failure, and you shouldn't be in the system. He isn't reading comments and is trying to read chat on mobile while streaming is hard. There's that, and there's also trying to not get hit by bikes or run into cars. I don't know if I said it, but there are a lot of times where people will on bikes, like, go as fast as they can through a red light, and I've always kind of tried to play chicken with them. I've always kind of tried to do this thing where if I know, like, if the light is green for me, I'll walk even if I see them going. And there was this one time that one of them actually played chicken and went a little too far with it, which is how I wound up tearing my quadricep last year. But are we talking about homework or complaining? If we're talking about homework, you should probably hit X because you're incapable of listening to an argument. Let's see. I just see complaining comment. Good, let's see. Any rational human being hates the 12 years of public education. Yep. You just gotta remember back to what it was like. I want you to think back to your 3rd or your 4th grade class. Like, how many kids in that class thought to themselves, this is a great way to learn? I think there's some 4chan there. School is practically designed to be the worst possible environment for kids. I agree.
I think it's a perfect.
What time is it here? It's 9:24. Crap. I'm behind by 20 minutes. K through 5 is where teachers can't make a mistake. This is crucial to getting children to engage in the pursuit of knowledge. I agree. Carbon tax kid. What? The worst is these asshole parents that drop their kids off at daycare after school. What was the point of having kids? Kind of agree with you. I mean, I am financially capable of having kids right now, but admittedly, I kind of enjoy a lot of the challenges I'm trying to solve as well. So I wouldn't try to. I wouldn't have kids because I know that somebody else would wind up taking care of them. And that just seems like a really shitty thing to do to my kids. So I make the decision to wait. I kind of, yeah. If I have kids, I'd probably want to be the one that's raising them. I have run a business, but also know business owners have clearly forgotten their past as employees. Sometimes we have even shared the same job. And that you know, that's a good point, because I didn't bring that one up. Like, I remember as an employee that if I had an idea, I was never, how do I put this? I remember all the things as an employee that I would have liked to have been able to do. So if I have an idea, I would like to be able to take responsibility for presenting the idea working, and I'd also like to take responsibility if it fails. And a lot of the people that work with me will tell me when I'm doing something incredibly stupid, like walking through a dark alley with a $700 phone. And I'll say, okay, how should it be done differently? And they'll tell me how it should be done differently. And if I do it a different way, and it winds up being successful, often I'll split the profit with them, or I'll give them a bonus. And if it doesn't work, I'm not really gonna I mean, technically we agree that, you know, we'll punish you in this way, but I never wind up doing it. Or there are things like the punch clock, for example. You know, I used to hate that. Or oh, the biggest one, tools. I remember the first place that I went to work at a while ago, and one of the first places that I worked at with dealing with laptop repair. I remember, I'm not going to say the name of it, but most of you who've been watching for a while already know. I needed a soldering iron for something, and they gave me a bad one with a terrible tip that didn't work. Like, it just didn't melt solder. And the guy gives me, so he comes back 5 minutes later with sandpaper. And it was that day that I said, you gotta be fucking kidding me. And then I just left and went home. Because I wasn't getting paid enough to take a sandpaper to a soldering iron. It was $7. And like, just no. For what? No. And so I've made sure that everybody has good tools, and if they do something wrong or something doesn't go the way it's supposed to, I ask them, what could have been done differently here, or what would have made this easier for you? And I'll listen to the first few reasons that they give, and if it keeps happening, then I'll know they were full of shit. But if it doesn't keep happening, then I'll know, sorry, gave you the wrong tools, gave you the wrong space, gave you the wrong situation, or maybe I just asked you to do something that I shouldn't have asked you to do. A lot of people forget what it was like to be an employee when they become a boss, and a lot of people forget what it was like to be a student once they become a parent or an adult. You should never really forget these things. Homework should be replaced with hands-on learning. Yes. Homework banned, that is fucked. No, that's great. Take us to a bar and show us how to pick up women. You must be on the wrong channel. Do you see me walking with my girlfriend here? Yeah, wrong channel. Go to another channel if you want to learn how to do that. When I figure it out, I'll let you all know. Probably involves not talking into a camera and a $5 V-neck t-shirt while walking down a dark alley. Moto G punches well above its price point. Sure does. Damn, I'm only up to 9:09. That's 9:29. So 20 minutes behind. See, at least I did my subtraction homework. Alright, what else am I? Clip-on wide-angle lens. You'd like to see more of the surroundings. Here, you can see the projects. There's projects. There's a mailbox that has a bunch of graffiti on it. And right across from it, those are apartments that Lewis probably won't be able to afford for the next 6 years. Give you some surroundings while I'm at it. What's your thoughts on parents who think school will make their children into who they are and not teaching their children life lessons? I think that's a bunch of bullshit. And it's one of those things where people think that I'm against sex education because I'm against a lot of it being discussed in school. I'm not. I want people to learn all of that stuff, and I want them to learn it even earlier than they would in school. I just feel like there's a lot of stuff that parents should be teaching their children. I'm not a fan of outsourcing to government what parents should be doing. Schools should not be taking the job of parents. Schools should be, filling in the gaps. But it really does surprise me what some people learn from school before their parents, and that's on the fault of both sides, the school and the parents. All right, back to me. School now is a big competition to get into college, which is funny because college is becoming more and more worthless in modern society.
Oh, yeah?
The triangle shit is useful for 3D application development. Well, if you're going to go into 3D application development, by all means learn the triangle shit. If you want to become a plumber, if you want to go into, if you want to become a soldier, if you want to work in the sewer, if you want to be a mechanic, it might not be helpful to do all the triangle shit. Students don't need to learn how to sit and listen instead of learning how to research and chase after knowledge. The problem is after-school students don't pursue knowledge. Yes, I agree. It goes back to that one comment that person made of, I can't wait to be done with learning, I hate learning. It made me sick. That entire room of 36 people were cheering about being done with learning. They hated learning. They said they hated learning. Soldiers went out to think they were forced to follow orders. Yeah, again, this system, which is based on the 200 or 300-year-old Prussian education system, is designed to create factory workers, soldiers. And how little it has progressed makes me sad. I'm out of here. Have fun walking and talking. Paul, I hope you got your microscope today. I really do. I'm really proud to see that you finally got them, that you finally ordered that thing. Or able to order it. Where are you going? Yeah. Schools are only supposed to cater to your interests only. They're obligated to offer as many different examples as possible to a large student body with varying interests. But here's where the problem comes in. Here's where the problem comes in. When you have someplace like Wagner High School that has 3,000 students, and of those 3,000 students, you have 0 of them. 0. And this is a 0. This is not a white supremacy symbol, just in case I got any SJWs watching. You have 0 students that are interested in learning the content. Out of the 3,000, there might just be something else you can put in there that's not useless crap. When I was in high school, 4 of my teachers just played movies from Netflix and we faked tests. Okay, you Raz, you're giving away your age, because when I was in high school, fuck if there was any Netflix. What the hell? Oh, looks like some type of graffiti. I swear, like out of the corner of my eye, that kind of looked like Sonic the Hedgehog. Okay, let's see. Trolling. I wish my homework was given when I was in school. That is why I took it upon myself to self-study. Problem is free education. Everything that turns free turns into crap. Yep. Thing is, if your education is free, then you don't really have a reason to ask the difficult questions like, are you preparing my children for an increasingly automated world? Is what you're teaching going to allow them to have demand in the modern workforce? Are my children going to be able to negotiate real wages, or are they going to have to ask the government to mandate minimum wages because what they've learned is so fucking useless that people would rather close their businesses than pay my child $15 an hour? You know, like the hard questions, the difficult questions. Kind of hungry. Pregnant girlfriend equals easy welfare life. That is a discussion for another stream. How do you live stream from your phone? YouTube app. I can confirm I'm in 4th year engineering school, and it's a cancer. If I don't have homework anymore, how can I use getting help with it as an excuse to go to Senpai's house so he notices me? What the fuck is a senpai? I don't understand. What the fuck is a senpai? I'm getting old, man.
Just a basic girl. Like she wants to smoke hookah. Yeah. Like that was like, I was like, that's disgusting. Not something that might happen.
Like, that's disgusting. Like, oh my god. Oh, Jesus. Basic. Okay. When people say that education is free, don't you just mean they tax? Yeah. We went over that in another video. That is a lot of basicism I just heard. Oh, why are they walking in the same direction I'm walking? This is what I got earplugs for, right? Alright. Time for me to get out of here. Kind of hungry. I worked myself up with some walking. I treat myself to a nice meal. Treat myself to some interesting food. So, I'm out.
What's how you doing?